would you do if you were trapped in a ship that had already sunk? Welcome to Mr. Truth or Terror, where we ask you to guess which of our tales are true or not. Are you ready? Story 1. The Boy with the Red Backpack. Thailand, 2004. You hear people talk about how they remember the color of things. For me, it was red, bright, almost glowing red, oversized and on the back of a little boy who really shouldn't have been alone. That's what I remember most about that morning. The ocean tried to kill us. My wife and I were on vacation in Khao Lak, Thailand. It was December 26th, 2004, the day after Christmas. We just finished breakfast at the hotel when I noticed something odd. The ocean was gone. The water had pulled back hundreds of feet, exposing the sea coral. I could even see where an old fishing boat had sunk out in the distance. People acted like it was part of the vacation. They walked out onto the seabed, pointing, laughing, snapping photos. Some kids chased crabs across the wet sand. That's when I saw the boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, standing at the water's edge, thin frame, crooked legs, red backpack strapped to his back like he was waiting for school. But I didn't see anyone with him. He stood out alone. No parents, no tour group, just him. He wasn't taking pictures, wasn't playing. He just stood there, staring at the horizon like he knew what was coming but didn't understand it. And then I looked out and saw it. At first I thought it was clouds, a dark line stretching across the edge of the sea, but it moved fast. It wasn't smoke, it was water, not a wave like in the movies, not curling, crashing. It was a wall of water, and it was growing taller by the second. People started screaming. Some froze, not knowing what to do, or not believing their eyes. Others turned and ran. I grabbed my wife's hand and told her to run. We sprinted toward this hill behind the resort, climbing over rocks and tangled up shrubs, slipping in the mud. Halfway up, I turned around. The boy hadn't moved. He was still standing there, still staring at the wave. I lost sight of him right before the water hit, as I was scanning the shoreline as it came in with a sound I'll never forget, like an entire city collapsing in on itself. It wasn't just water. It was debris, wood, metal, trees, cars, bodies, all of it moving like it was being pushed by the impatient hand of something clearing the way. We survived. Barely. The wave stopped just short of the hilltop. I remember the silence after it passed. No birds, no voices, but the hiss of broken power lines and the distant crack of burning wood. In the days that followed, we volunteered to help sort through what was left. Clothes tangled in trees, toothbrushes on rooftops, someone's wedding dress still zipped in plastic caught on a fence, but no sign of the boy. Not him, not the backpack. A week later, I saw a photo in a Thai newspaper. A relief worker holding a child's backpack, red, mud-caked but intact. They found it 5 miles inland, wedged into a fallen palm tree. No ID inside, no name. I clipped that picture and kept it. I don't know why. Maybe to remind myself he was real. Maybe because part of me hopes he somehow made it. But deep down, I don't think he did. Because sometimes when I stand too close to the tide, I swear I see that red blur in the corner of my vision. Still standing, still waiting, still staring at the wave. Story 2. The Wave That Took My Town. South Dakota, 1972. I was 11 the day the water almost took us. Not ocean water. South Dakota doesn't have that. We had canyons, hills, dry creeks, and skies that turned black when the weather changed. It was June 9th, 1972, and it started just like any other summer storm. Rain pelted the roof all afternoon, and by dinner time the gutters overflowed. My dad wasn't worried. He grew up here. He knew the land and said it could take it. But around 10 p.m., the wind picked up, the power went out, and by 11:30, someone was banging on our front door. I opened the door and it was my neighbor. He stood there, drenched to the bone, gasping for breath. "The dam broke," he said. "Canyon Lake's gone." My dad didn't ask questions. He grabbed my mom, my sister, and me, and we ran. I didn't have shoes on. The water was ankle deep, then knee deep, then chest high by the time we reached the old cottonwood tree near the school fence. My dad lifted me into the branches, then my sister, then my mom. He told us he'd be right behind us. I wasn't sure what that meant, but when I looked back, he wasn't. From up in that tree, I watched my whole town come apart. Trailers floated past like bathtub toys. A car rolled down the street like it was being chased. I saw a telephone pole snap clean in half. The water didn't roar like a monster. It moved more like a machine, silent, relentless. It just kept flowing. I think I screamed. I think we all did. By morning, rescue crews were moving through in rowboats. A firefighter pulled us out with a rope ladder. I remember his face, pale, blank, like he was already numb from what he'd seen. My mom kept asking about my dad, over and over. At the time, I didn't know how to tell her what I saw. I didn't want to believe what I was afraid to find out. They found his wallet weeks later, caught in a tree branch a mile downstream. Everything inside was soaked, except for one photo. It was of us, our family, smiling. 238 people died that night. Most of them were my neighbors. Some were never found. They rebuilt the town, but it never felt right again. My school became a shelter. My church became a morgue. I moved away as soon as I could. But every time it rains hard, really hard, I can't sleep. Because I know what water sounds like when it decides it's not your friend anymore. It doesn't yell, it whispers. Story 3, The Screams Beneath the Ice. Baltic Sea, 1994. I have a cousin who worked the kitchen on the Estonia, a massive passenger ferry that ran between Estonia and Sweden. He was saving up to move inland. His name was Marco, and he hated the sea, ironically. HR said that it made his skin feel cold, even when it wasn't wet. On September 27, 1994, he called my aunt and told her they were running a bit behind schedule, but that it was nothing serious and that everything was fine. By the next morning, he was dead. The Estonia sank just before 2 a.m. in the freezing black of the Baltic Sea. Survivors have said that it happened so fast there wasn't time to scream. The bow visor had torn off, letting water flood into the car deck. In just over 30 minutes, the ship vanished beneath the waves. 852 people died. Only 137 made it out alive. Marco wasn't one of them, at least not that we could prove. His body was never recovered. Neither was his coat, his backpack, his locket, or his watch. Nothing, just silence. But the silence didn't last long. Some of the rescue divers have started talking, not to the press, not in statements, quietly, over beers, in whispers. One diver said he heard banging, hours after the ship had gone down, rhythmic, human. Another said he saw a face behind the glass of a cabin window, frozen, staring out. The government declared the wreck a protected grave. No more dives, no salvaging, no further questions. But rumors got out. There was leaked footage, brief, glitchy shots of the interior, a hallway twisted sideways, a door that looked scratched from the inside. No bodies, just the echo of something terrible. One diver told a journalist that he saw something on his final descent, a shape pressed against the metal inside, like someone had tried to claw their way out. Marco's mother kept his room the same, just how he left it for 15 years. She never admitted that he was gone, just delayed. On bad nights, she swore she could hear his alarm clock tick. Now, I don't believe in ghosts, but I believe in trauma that sticks. I believe that if enough people scream in the dark, the sound doesn't always disappear. Sometimes it lingers, but underwater, it gets caught in the currents. It repeats. One diver, the last one I ever spoke to, told me something that I won't forget. He said the sea didn't want the ship back. It just wanted the people. And sometimes they don't stay quiet. Story 4. The Lighthouse That Watched Her Drown. Oregon coast, 1983. I never saw her again. Just her face and a wave before she turned and walked down toward the beach. That was my BFF Jess. What I loved about her was her confidence. She was confident like the world owed her an explanation for every mystery. And the sea. That was her favorite kind of mystery. We'd taken a trip to Cannon Beach on a whim. 2 college girls tired of exams and parties and everything artificial. Jess wanted wind and salt. She wanted silence. I just wanted a few days away from campus before the noise of real life returned. It was overcast that weekend. Windy, but not stormy. One of those quiet coastal days where the water creeps up gently and the fog feels like it's holding its breath. We rented a cabin overlooking the shore. Nothing fancy, just creaking floorboards and the smell of wood smoke and mildew. But Jess loved it. She said it felt haunted, and then laughed, like the idea excited her. On the last night, just before we packed up, she told me she wanted to walk down to the water one last time. "Just 10 minutes," she said. "I'll be right back." I remember her windbreaker, yellow, too big for her, the sleeves past her wrists. I watched her from the porch, sipping the bad coffee we had made. She moved like she was being pulled, not walking exactly, not hurrying either, just drawn. She stopped at the shoreline and stood at the edge of the tide, right where the water thinned over the sand and slid back into itself. Her back was to me, her arms were down, no movement, just stillness. Then I blinked, and she was gone. At first, I thought maybe she'd slipped into a hollow or crouched behind a dune. I called out her name. There was nothing, no answer. I ran down, stumbling barefoot through the thickening fog, my heart hammering in my chest. I must have called out her name 50 times. Once I got down there, I found nothing, no jacket, no footprints. The sand was smooth, untouched, as if no one had even been standing there. After an hour of frantic searching and calling out her name, I called 911. The cops came out that night and took a report, filed it as a missing persons. The Coast Guard came the next morning. They searched the entire coastline, drones, dogs, scuba divers. They said it was a rogue wave, said it must have hit suddenly, yanked her under before she could scream. I nodded and signed the forms. Missing, presumed drowned. But I never really believed it. A week later, I got a call from a man who worked the lighthouse up the coast. He said he found my number in a local flyer about Jess's disappearance. Said he wasn't sure if he should say anything, but something had been eating at him. He told me that the night she vanished, just after sunset, he saw someone in the water. A woman, standing waist-deep in the surf, facing out toward the sea, not struggling, not moving, just standing there. Her hair was long, he said. Her jacket was yellow. He called down to her. No response. By the time he made it outside, the water was empty. I didn't know what to say. I just hung up. But the next morning, I drove out there, found the lighthouse, stood where he said he saw her, listened to the waves until they became indistinguishable from my own thoughts. The wind was sharp, cold, and for a moment, I felt like something was looking back at me. I never told her parents about the call. I still dream about Jess, always the same dream. She's standing in the surf, facing away, her yellow jacket soaked, clinging to her arms. The water is still, too still, like the whole world has stopped breathing. I call her name, but the sound never leaves my mouth. It gets stuck in my throat like salt water. She never turns around. They put a plaque for her near Cannon Beach. Tourists walk by it every day. I go there sometimes. When I do, I bring flowers. I look into the sea and I say her name out loud, just to make sure it hasn't been forgotten, but I don't really go near the water anymore. And if I see someone standing too still in the surf, I look away. Because some waves don't crash, they wait. And some disappearances aren't accidents. Story 5. The Drowned Church Bells of Old Pattonsburg. Missouri, 1993. Some towns die without a peep, but when a town drowns, it screams loud enough to be remembered. Old Pattonsburg, Missouri, wasn't the kind of place you'd expect to make headlines or drown. It had one diner and 2 churches. It had a stop sign that only half the town stopped for. But it had character that was endearing as well. It had familiar smells, familiar people. It was the kind of place where you could leave your keys in your truck and they'd still be there in the morning. And then the flood came. It was the summer of 1993. The Grand River stopped pretending to be a lazy stream and showed us what it really was, a beast. It rained for days. Then it rained more. Then the levees failed. I remember standing on my porch watching that brown water eating up topsoil as it made its way across the fields like it had a plan. First it took the fence posts, then the corner of Main Street, then the old church, the white one with the bell tower that rang every Sunday at 9 a.m., even when no one was inside, so it already had a reputation for spookiness. The town couldn't be saved, that's what the feds said, so we were all relocated. It wasn't far, just 10 miles up the hill. They called it New Pattonsburg, built us fresh homes with clean drywall and secure windows. But something stayed behind. A few weeks after the move, people started talking. Not reporters, locals, fishermen mostly. They'd be out early, fog still clinging to the water, rods in hand, and they'd hear it. A bell, not a jingle, not a buoy. A bell. 3 chimes, always 3, then silence. Most brushed it off, wind on the water, memory playing tricks. But then the divers showed up, government contractors hired to retrieve city records sealed in waterproof storage lockers beneath the old courthouse. One of them came back up and refused to go down again, said something brushed past him in the dark, not a fish, not a current, something colder than the water around it. Another diver said he heard singing beneath the surface, women's voices, clear, unbroken. He surfaced in full panic, tore off his gear, and quit the job. The state declared the area unstable shortly after. No more dives, no more records. And still, the bell rang. I remember the night I heard it myself. I'd gone out on the lake in a canoe just before sunrise. I told myself it was to fish. Really, I think I just needed to feel like I was still near the place that raised me. The water was still as glass. The air was heavy. I let the paddle rest in my lap. Then it came, 3 chimes, muffled but clear, low, not mechanical, not distant, close. I turned the canoe and paddled back to shore so fast I could barely breathe. I never told anyone, not for years, but I still have dreams where I'm walking through the old church again, only everything's wrong. The pews are soaked, the windows are warped, the pulpit is cracked and crooked, but the bell rings, always 3 times. They say water doesn't hold memory, but I think that town remembered itself too well, and it rang the bell to make sure we didn't forget. They say if you listen closely, You can still hear it on certain nights, usually around 3 a.m., that hour when the world goes quiet and strange things tend to stir. For me, no matter how far I've moved, I still hear it. 3 a.m., 3 chimes, then silence. Story 6. The Deep That Watches. Mariana Trench, 2021. The ocean is deep in a way we aren't built to understand. You can quote me pressure stats or recite the depth of the Mariana Trench from memory, 10,984 meters or 36,070 feet. But none of it prepares you for what it feels like down there. And I don't mean emotionally, I mean viscerally, like the water is pressing in on you, not just from all sides, but from inside your own chest. I was part of a 2021 research expedition, a team assigned to collect sediment samples near the trench's western slope. It was routine work. The real heavy lifting was done by an ROV, a remotely operated vehicle we controlled from the surface. Think of it like a deep-sea drone, expensive, fragile, and expendable, if the data was worth the risk. The mission we were on was going fine. We had dropped the ROV, watched it descend into the darkness of the deep. At around 10,900 meters, the feed cut out, which is not rare. The pressure messes with everything at those depths. But after 12 seconds, the video came back, except the camera was tilted, no longer facing the seabed. Instead, it was pointed at something. I don't know how to describe it except to say it didn't belong. It wasn't rock, it wasn't coral, it was smooth, organic looking, ridged, but not like a whale or squid. It was still, completely motionless. We thought maybe the ROV had crashed into a seamount or some freak geological formation. And then it pulsed, not like a jellyfish, not like anything biological we'd cataloged before. It was slow and deliberate, like the surface of this thing breathed. The pulse traveled from left to right, as if the whole structure was waiting for something to trigger it. Then the feed glitched again. When the video came back, the camera had pulled back a few meters. The thing, whatever it was gone, or maybe it had moved. The ROV spun slowly, scanning in every direction. And then we saw it, a slit, a vertical opening in the dark, maybe 10 meters wide, not gaping, just watching, like an eye, half-lidded, reflective, not open, not closed, just enough to let us know that we were seen. Then the feed went dead again. No static, no system errors, just nothing. We attempted to ping the ROV, no response. We began retrieval. The tether pulled tight for a moment, then suddenly went slack, like the machine had been released. When the cable came back up, it was sheared clean, not frayed, not snapped, just a smooth, almost surgical cut. The official report blamed a pressure-related failure and said the data was corrupted. That's the version we submitted. But the raw footage, we watched it again before it was erased. Not just archived, erased. Gone from every drive, wiped from every backup. The guy in charge of data integrity quit the same night, packed his bag and walked off the ship before we even docked. Later that year, I got a message from one of the technicians, an older guy who'd worked on trench dives back in the early 2000s. He said we weren't the first to see it. "We call it the Watcher," he said, "and if it looks at you, you don't go back down." He never elaborated, wouldn't answer my calls after that, deleted his profile. I've told myself it was nothing, some hallucination caused by pressure and nerves, that the eye wasn't real, that the pulse was a sensor error, that the cut on the tether was just tension on a weakened line. But I don't believe any of that, because I still dream about it, and in my dreams I'm not watching it anymore. It's watching me. So, did you figure them out? Let's go back and take one last breath. before the surface. Story 1. The boy with the red backpack. A child on a beach, a wall of water, and a red backpack that never should have been found that far inland. That story was true. One of the many eyewitness accounts from the 2004 Indian Ocean Tsunami, where thousands vanished in seconds, and some are still being found in fragments. Story 2. The wave that took my town. A father's final words. A boy clinging to a tree as a city is ripped from its roots. That story was also true. The 1972 Rapid City flood remains one of the deadliest in U.S. history. The water came in the dark and left with everything. Story 3. The screams beneath the ice. A ship swallowed by the Baltic, hundreds lost, and the diver who swore the wreck wasn't silent. That one, true. The MV Estonia disaster still raises questions, and some say it's not the sea that won't let go. It's what was left inside. Story 4. The lighthouse that watched her drown. A girl gone without a splash, a figure seen waist-deep days later, a face that never turned around. That story is true. Cannon Beach has lost more than one visitor to rogue waves. And yes, there was a lighthouse keeper who filed a report of seeing someone in the surf who wasn't supposed to be there. Story 5. The drowned church bells of Old Pattonsburg. A ghost town, a flooded church, and the bell that still rings beneath the lake. That story, true. Old Pattonsburg, Missouri was evacuated in 1993 after a historic flood. Divers did report cold spots, and some locals still claim they've heard the bell toll just before dawn. Story 6. The deep that watches. A vanished ROV, a ridged surface that pulsed, and something that might still be waiting in the trench. That story was also true, according to the person who submitted it. There's no official record, of course, but some scientists say there are things we haven't discovered at the bottom of the ocean, not because we can't, but because something down there doesn't want to be found. 6 stories, all terrifying, all cold, and every one of them true. Unless, of course, you think I'm lying. This has been Mr. Truth or Terror. Sleep well, friends.